go back to our presentation and we're going to start our discussion. And I hope it is one where we are able to learn more about each other and learn more about why you are so important as volunteers. We're going to start with something that is very important, is why the Literacy Council exists. We're a nonprofit organization. We provide quality educational options that enhance the lives of adults through programs designed to increase their literacy and language skills. We design our programs around the goals of the adult learners who come to us, and we need a very broad range of skills from volunteers who join our faculty. So that's why we were asking for your backgrounds, because oftentimes when you join us, literacy is what the first start is, but it might be in other areas. It might be in creative spaces such as art, wellness might be an area, parenting might be an area, science, or any other thing. Literacy connects to all of those other subjects, and we want to make sure that we can provide that quality education for all adult learners who come to us. Our vision is to empower adults to reach their full potential as parents, employees, and community members through enhancing their literacy skills. We envision a fully literate community where everyone can read. And that's why we say on almost everything we do, everyone needs to read, because it's true. And we've been carrying that message since I've been here, from September or August 2nd of 2010 all the way up to now, to make sure that that message is known and more adult learners can come to us and receive the services that are necessary for them to reach their goals. We're going to start something that is called the illiteracy quiz. This is not a graded thing. In fact, it's a group effort, but part of this effort that we have for this evening is to raise your awareness about the state of adult literacy, and also to be able to raise your awareness of how important you are to the system of adult learning for these adult learners who come to us. So we're going to go through these, and anyone and everyone would like to be able to give answers. We want to make sure we get through all of these questions and then talk about it a bit. What percentage of adults 18 and over in the United States is functionally illiterate? That will be reading it below the 4th grade level. Anyone venture a guess? Don't worry. We have
13%.
13% says Jasmine. Anybody else give another number?
I'm going to go with 20.
Going with 20. Ta-da! 20% of our adult population fits that description of being functionally illiterate. 20%. That's 43 million adults in the United States that cannot read, write, or do basic math above that 3rd grade level. Among industrialized countries, we are not 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. We're more like 16th. So this is a crisis that the United States as a country really needs to address. And the people who are on the front lines of addressing this issue are those who are serving in literacy councils across the country. There's about 1,100 literacy councils. We are one of many that are taking on this work, and most of them are driven by volunteers such as you. So the first educator for many of those 43 million are volunteers such as yourselves, who takes time out of your day and life to be able to help to improve literacy skills for another. What percentage of adults in the United States with low literacy skills lives in poverty?
I'll say 68%.
68%. Anyone else give a different number? The answer is 43%. 68%, 43%. Both of those are still high, but there is a strong correlation with the lack of literacy skills and poverty. Without the literacy skills, how do you secure the job to be able to earn a family living wage, or be able to access the services in the community to be more independent and more capable of being able to reach your goals? So we really want to make sure that we see literacy as not just a way to be able to improve academics, but is able to be able to lift individuals out of poverty as they acquire more skills and knowledge to be able to seek goals to help them to be able to be more self-sufficient and sustainable. What percentage of adults in Kalamazoo County is at the lowest level 1 literacy rate? That's that 4th grade and below.
%13.
Jasmine, you are correct. And some might say, wow, we're better than the national average, but let's think about this for a second. We're Kalamazoo County. We have Western Michigan University, Kalamazoo College, Kalamazoo Valley Community College. We have libraries that have won international awards. We have school systems that care. We have the Kalamazoo Promise that provides free college tuition for those who graduate from Kalamazoo Public Schools. And yet, 13% of our adult population, approximately 25,000 adults, 1 out of 8, 18 and over, fit that functionally illiterate or struggling to read individual. So for me, at 13%, even though it's lower than the national average, it is still something that is a crisis that needs to be addressed, and you are on the front line of addressing. What percentage of people in Kalamazoo County receiving cash assistance from the state dropped out of high school? Remember that correlation between literacy and low literacy and poverty? What percentage do you believe fits this answer?
Is that B, 25%?
Anyone else have a different answer than B?
I would say 40.
And you would be right. There is a cost to low literacy, and individuals that do not have the literacy skills to be able to access services, acquire academic skills, apply for jobs that pay a living wage, they also are the ones who are most likely to be reliant on cash assistance and continue to be in that situation where they need additional supports in order to sustain themselves as a family. And we know that we want our learners and our residents in general to be able to be self-sufficient and thrive to reach their goals. That's why it's so important that we really focus on reaching the most challenged populations, the most marginalized, to be able to help them to acquire those skills. We know that if you were to work with adults and get them up to a 6th grade level, which is our goal in Kalamazoo County, is we want every adult to be reading at least 6th grade level. But if we did that across the country, that would bring in additional $2.2 trillion of wealth to those families, because they would have better access to greater opportunities and a greater capability of supporting themselves and their families. We know that it's estimated that between 106 to 238 billion is lost to individuals with low literacy skills by improperly or incapably accessing healthcare services. So this is a very, very difficult challenge for those with low literacy to be able to maintain their health, access services, and be able to get ahead of it by being preventative in taking care of themselves. And we know that workers who have less education than a high school diploma have the lowest median income that you'll find. And that's something that we want to be able to make sure that we are correcting. With higher education, you have higher opportunities to be able to increase income. So this is not just about learning how to read. This is about learning how the skills necessary to take care of yourself and reach your goals. Which factor most influences a child's literacy success in the critical early years of formal education? What do you think?
Income level.
Anyone else have a different thought other than income level?
I would be debating between B and D, because the occupations and the educational level of both parents set an example also for them and the opportunities that they have access to.
Very good thinking all the way around. Statistically, according to the Department of Education and the research that we've had, the most strongest predictor of a child's academic success is the reading level of their mother. Another way to think about it is early childhood education does not begin at preschool. It does not begin at school or elementary school. It begins at home with a mom, dad, uncle, or someone who can read. You will be tutoring individuals who are that first teacher of their children. And this hopefully will be able to curb that cycle, because 72% of children born to adults with low literacy skills are likely to repeat the cycle. What percentage of incarcerated individuals nationwide score in the 2 lowest literacy levels? That's below the 6th grade.
Is it 75%?
You are correct. This one always makes me sad. We know that if you lack literacy skills, you also lack options, and you may make poor choices based off of having few of them. Regardless, those who are incarcerated take responsibility for it and come back out into our community. It is our job to be able to make sure that they have the skills necessary to be able to continue their education and complete their goals. So 75% of those who are incarcerated did not complete high school and can be classified in that low literacy area. That's one of the reasons why in our region, there is an offender success program for reentry, and the Literacy Council is one of the first agencies that offers services for those who are returning citizens. And we know that 43%, those who participate in literacy programs like ours are 43% less likely to go back into incarceration. Most pertinent healthcare information given to patients is written at what grade level?
I would say B10 because I review some of those leaflets. So
And you are correct.
they're horrible to read.
They are. That's one of the reasons why we have a health literacy program, and we work with other healthcare providers to write health materials in what is called plain language. Our goal is to have all health materials that we have written at below 6th grade. We do document reviews to revise brochures. We even have health literacy classes to teach health so that our learners are more capable of being able to read some of those health terms and prescriptions and other terminology. But our goal is to work with our partners to be able to make the printed material more accessible. We work with Bronson, Borges. We have a great partnership with WMed. I serve on our institutional review board for when they're doing human research trials to help them to be able to make those materials more accessible and less intimidating for individuals. And we have a great partnership with Bronson School of Nursing, as I said before. So this is a big issue, and it explains why some people who are of a lower literacy and language level are less likely to take advantage of healthcare, even if they are eligible for it. Of the 2 million immigrants that come to the United States each year, what percent lack a high school education and proficiency in English language skills?
I'll say 75%.
Anyone have a different number?
I was thinking 25%.
I was gonna,
I'm biased. I was gonna say 50. So
Again, you would have been closer to the accurate number. 50% is what we have, but it's actually 53% among immigrants. Only half are proficient English speakers. And that's one of the reasons why we do include English as a second language as part of our literacy services. We run one of the largest English as a second language programs in Southwest Michigan. It is called ESL of Southwest Michigan, based at our physical site at the Prince of Peace Lutheran Church. We also have tutoring services for English at El Concilio. And during the summer, we have our summer ESL program located at Westwood United Methodist Church, focusing on health. Almost done. Noting a decline in federal and state funding, yes, they cut us a lot. For adult education services, what percent of Michigan adults in need are receiving services? So of all the people who need services, what percentage of them are getting services?
About 20%.
30%.
20%, 30%. Here's the problem, less than 10. And that's because the system for adult education is not funded in the same levels or in the same ways as K-12 or other even alternative education. And our job is to make sure that we're building up some of the infrastructure in terms of faculty by bringing in volunteers to be able to help. Without you, it will be even further less than 10%. Most of those adults who come and they are reading at below the 6th grade, the most affordable and accessible way is working with volunteers such as yourself until they can get stable in their academics and move on to those formal GED preparation programs and workforce programs. But it's sad to say that in Michigan, less than 10% are receiving services. We're working in our community to be able to get past that 20%. That's our goal, is to make sure that at least 20% of our adult learner population are receiving services so that we can make sure that our whole community is prosperous for everyone. In the 2020 presidential election, what percentage of the total number of voters did not have a high school diploma or GED?
Is it 15%?
15%,
25.
25%. Actual number is very low, 3%. That means of all the people who are voting, only 3% had a GED or a high school diploma. One of the things that we teach is how to be able to read, but we also have citizenship class, and we work with the League of Women Voters to be able to help people to register to vote, understand how to read ballots, and understand the voting process, because we believe that people should have their own capability of determining what leadership in our communities and at our governmental agencies should be. So 3% is way too low. I wish it was 25% and better. And we do need individuals who can help us. We have a wonderful volunteer by the name of Jay Parsons who teaches our citizenship class. And sometimes we have our college students that come from Western Michigan University to teach our citizenship classes as well. But this is a very important part, is having the literacy skills to make those choices. Final question. What is the acceptable percentage for adult illiteracy in Kalamazoo County? You already heard it's 13%. What's the acceptable percentage of illiteracy for adults in Kalamazoo County?
Yeah, there is no acceptable percentage, is there?
Is that, are you saying none of the above?
I am 0.
0. How many agree with 0?
In an ideal world, yes, that should be the target, no?
Yes, it should be. And the thing is, if it is true, and every presentation I've made, every conversation I've had, whether it's in front of a crowd of people at a state conference or around a coffee table for individuals who are coming to our organization to support us financially, everyone's been saying 0. And if that's going to happen, that means we have to have more tutors who are capable of serving those adults who need us, and a community that is responding more comprehensively to be able to provide those services. I believe firmly that we in Kalamazoo County have the ability to achieve a fully literate community. But the first best option is having a volunteer faculty to be able to carry on that work. So I'm going to stop sharing to see if there was any insights that you have, because we want to make sure you know how important you are. Without you, we can't get to 0. Without you, poverty is not going to have one of the strongest tools to be able to lift people out of poverty. Mothers and fathers will not be more capable first teachers of their children. Healthcare will not be fully accessible, and a great many other things. But did any of you have any insights or thoughts based off of this little quiz that we all took? You did very well.
I came late, and if you're not Tito, who are you?
What was the question?
I came late, so I didn't get an introduction for you, and you're not Tito.
Oh, well, my name is Michael Evans. I'm the executive director of the Kalamazoo Literacy Council. I was trained in this tutor training way back in September of 2010, joined the tutor training crew at that time, and have been helping tutors to become part of our training, our tutor faculty ever since.
I thought I recognized you from the Ollie meeting, and I'm kind of surprised that you guys provide a lot more over and above just getting people to reading levels.
We believe we need to have services to help adults to be able to reach their goals. And I'm glad that you remember my commercial at Ollie. That was Taste of Ollie not too long ago. Evidence that it worked is that you are here. So hooray, we win. Anyone else have any insights before we move on? We're going to learn about the expectations that we have of tutors and of the learners that we serve. Right, let's get back to that. Ta-da. All right. You are here because you have an interest in becoming a volunteer tutor for the Kalamazoo Literacy Council, the organization that trains most of the tutors in our community. We do have other agencies that train tutoring for different types of learners, but we are the largest and the most consistent trainers of tutors in our community. Qualifications that we look for in a tutor are that you have good reading and writing skills. You're going to be the guide for someone else to develop their reading and writing skills. So if you can read and write proficiently, you can teach someone else to read and write as well. The way I say it is an everyday person with everyday skills can teach another everyday person how to read and write. But it starts with having those skills first. The ability to talk clearly. So if you can speak loudly enough and clearly enough, that means that you can have the communication skills necessary because you are the guide in English as well as reading and writing in terms of speaking proficiency. The ability to see and hear clearly so that you can see the materials and hear your learner. That's something that we have found. We do have accommodations and definitely want to make sure that we have the broadest range of service that we can provide. So if there are anyone that has sight or hearing challenges, this training by itself does not address it, but we do work in partnership with services to be able to help. Being conscientious, flexible, patient, and positive. Adult learners are a lot different than K-12. One of the biggest differences is adults have more complicated lives and they can leave our services at any time and not be wrong. I gotta go take care of my kids. They're gonna leave and be right. I got a job. They're gonna leave and be right. So our job is to be flexible enough to be able to meet their needs when they are available and to be able to help them to be able to learn in a way that's consistent with what their experience is. The ability to respond to others in a warm, realistic, and non-judgmental manner. The last part is the most important. There are individuals who have made this choice and they weren't really proud of themselves when they said I couldn't read. Our job is to make sure that they are proud of the choice to be able to read. And that means that we're not asking, how did you get to be a 47-year-old truck driver and not be able to read? Is that even legal? Instead, we're saying, we're so glad that you're here to continue learning. Our job is to be able to learn together and to make sure that you can continue toward your goals. We're glad that you're here. So it's one thing that's very different. We can be outraged about the condition of illiteracy rates, but that outrage is never expressed to our learners. It's for our learners in other spaces to get more people to care. Have access to transportation. If you are a volunteer tutor and you are meeting with learners, you should be able to move closer to where they are because they may have greater challenges for transportation. Our public spots oftentimes are very close to where our learners work, and we want to make sure our tutors can come to them to make it more convenient for them. Of course, if you're tutoring virtually, zip codes and transportation don't matter. So if you can get on this call, you can tutor the learners who come to us. And just as a fact, 80% of our learners who stayed with us and emerged out of the COVID-19 pandemic prefer virtual services. Who knew that was going to happen? Be willing to have a background check performed as well. We want to make sure that our faculty is consistent with needs and safety standards that we have. We do have individuals that have, as my other half would say, a colorful past, but we make sure that they're matched with populations where that is less of a challenge or concern. We are always trying to make sure that we have the broadest range of participation in our faculty as possible. The duties, here's what you're expected to do. Meet once or twice a week, up to an hour and a half, and call your learner if you're going to be late or absent. Oftentimes, you are the first, if not only, opportunity for them to learn. So we want to make sure that there's some consistency. Of course, you could take vacations. Of course, you could take time off, but the tutor-learner relationship is a very important relationship, and we would like to see some consistency over time. Use the materials recommended by the coordinator as the primary materials, supplemented primary materials as needed. So we provide you with a lot of tools so that we are capable of being able to support you because we know what you're teaching. That doesn't mean that the only thing you can use is what we give you, but we ask that you use the materials that we know have worked and have been evaluated by our partners in literacy and our veteran tutor trainers who have been here long before I have been. Prepare for each lesson, show up ready. Your learners will want that and they'll need that. We'll talk about that during the course of the training. Keep a record of learning progress. Your preparation time, your teaching time. This is a report that Jesse's going to send to you monthly, and we need this to be able to know how much time has been committed to this adventure of adult learning. We let our community know how much time has been committed and how much time is needed to educate a learner population throughout Kalamazoo County. Inform your friendly connector or navigator of any problems or changes in your tutoring status. What's a friendly connector? These are veteran, experienced tutors who are meant to be your mentors along your tutoring journey. What's a navigator? These are skilled professionals who we have hired to work with our adult learners to help them to identify goals and remove barriers to goals. So at the first sign of challenge, you don't have to solve it on your own. Talk to your friendly connector, talk to a navigator, and we can get to work to make sure that your tutoring can continue without as much challenge and struggle. Provide encouragement and support to the learner. Again, for those where you are the primary person, they need as much encouragement as possible. I'm never getting anywhere. Yes, you are. You got through that chapter. Look how many more words you've learned. Look how much more clearly you can read. They need that encouragement to be able to see progress and continue to be motivated to reach their goals. That comes from you. And set goals with your learner, not for them, with them, and monitor the learner's changing needs and goals. As their needs and goals change, our services and supports change with them. If you are the primary contact, we won't know to change until you tell us. So that's one of the things, the duties that we have. Guidelines, here's how you do it. Tutor is not to provide transportation for the learner. Why? We have transportation support for adult learners. They have access to public transportation. For those who are driving, we do have the capability of providing gas cards, and we locate our services oftentimes within walking distances, in some cases, even within the housing complex that they're living in. So that's not your responsibility to provide the transportation. This is what we do. Sessions are to be held in public places such as libraries, churches, community centers, so that is not to be held in private homes. Where is that different? If you're working with refugee resettlement and so many of those services are provided in homes, that is a different circumstance. But for our traditional tutor, we have tutoring in public places for safety reasons, and also to be able to make sure that we have access to be able to provide additional supports at those sites. Confidentiality must be maintained at all times. Some of our learners, it will be a job jeopardy, if their bosses found out that they are reading at 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, or not at all. It's not our job to share that information. Some, they are already feel some shame. And the last thing they want to hear is, oh, I know that you're a student with the Kalamazoo Literacy Council. I'm so glad that you're working on your skills. They didn't want that to be known unless they do. And there are some of our learners who are advocates who will speak boldly for them. We do not want their confidential information to be shared unless they choose to share it. And I'll be real frank, this is the one thing that I've had as far as being able to dismiss a volunteer on LSAT occasion. This has been the most frequent, is oversharing, oftentimes trying to do the right thing, but doing it the wrong way. Alcohol or illegal drug use is strictly prohibited prior to and during sessions. That's a pretty obvious thing, but for some of our learners, that can be a violation of their probation. It can be a violation of their personal ethics, and it can be a bad modeling for the types of behavior that they need. And also, we are a professional service driven by volunteers. We want to make sure that we do this in a way that is consistent with that. And finally, please keep us updated on your address, phone number, and those of your learner. We want to be able to reach you so that we know how to support you, and the same for your learner. And oftentimes you're the primary contact for that learner. We have information that's in the folder that either has been sent to you, or you've already been, or you'll receive it shortly, that has all the guidelines in the application and the paperwork. Before the completion of this training, please send that information to the office or drop it by, and we'll get you officially enrolled before the end of the training. So learners, they have expectations too. We have a conversation similar, but in reverse with our learners before they meet you. Here's their qualifications, and I'll go through these quickly because we have a lot to go over. They need to be at least 18 years old. But what about the children? We have a family literacy program that is multi-generational learning, and that's how we serve those children. And we work with other partners that work with populations that are below 18. Our organization is the only organization dedicated exclusively to those adult learners. So we want to make sure that we have enough of you available for the adults who need us. They need to be able to speak and understand English or be enrolled in an ESL program that helps them with the proficiency in English. This tutoring, it is effective in helping adults with low levels of English fluency, but we want to make sure that they also have access to English classes that are taught by our certified instructors to be able to more comprehensively address their language needs. And we have some volunteers who would like to tutor inside of our ESL programs as well. So if you come through our traditional training such as this, the expectation is that the learner who will be assigned to you can speak well enough to speak with an English-speaking tutor. And for those who are still working on their ESL skills, they will also be enrolled in an ESL program. That's our job, to make sure they have those services. They need to be able to see on print on a page. If they can't, then we have access to services. We've helped with eyeglasses, eye exams, and several other types of things, larger print. But our job is to make sure that there's not a barrier to learning, beginning with the ability to see what's on the page. They should be able to hold and control the pencil well enough to print letters. We do have some adaptive equipment for those that may have some mobility issues, but we expect that for those who are assigned to you, that all of these barriers have been adjusted accordingly so that they can be prepared to study. Have access to transportation, private or public, just like you. And we provide accommodations and supports for adults who need them. So our job is to have flexible services to meet them where they're at. Some of our learners, they are studying from home, so transportation is not that barrier, which means that childcare is not that barrier, and which means that they don't have to try to rush to get home, take a shower, and then come out. So that's one of the types of choices that they have. But we also make sure that they have other barriers, that we have access to services to make sure that they can be present to learn with you. Here's their duties, what they're supposed to do. Meet with you when you're ready and be prepared when you're ready. That 1 to 1.5 hours, and call the tutor if they're going to be late or absent. So we don't want you waiting in a library or in a literacy center. I wonder if they're going to show up. They should let you know. We say if they have 3 no calls, no shows, then that's a situation where we would expect that there will be a separation of that bond. But usually if there's even 1 absence, call your friendly connector or a navigator so we can get on the case to find out what's going on and help them to be present. They are told that you are volunteers. They know that you are not being paid for time or gas. We want them to respect you for your time because that is something that's very valuable. And that's sometimes something that, in terms of demanding, this is your job to do it, they understand they should approach the fact that they have a tutor, a very rare commodity and an important part of their journey, to be able to understand that this is a privilege to be able to have this type of relationship. So we let them know up front. They should give the tutor their phone number and be able to be reached. What happens if they run out of minutes? They call us. What happens if their phone don't work? They call us, and our job is to make sure that they have a phone that works, an email that works, and know how to use it. They should want to learn and be able to study. We sometimes get assigned learners where they may come out of drug court and their probation officer or someone might say, you have to go to a literacy program and get up to the 6th grade. And then they show up with their arms crossed going, I don't want to be here. If they don't want to be here and they don't want to be with you, you would not be assigned that particular learner. They have other options, and we work to make sure that they are motivated to learn before they take the time to study with you. They should be polite. They should make sure that they are being cordial and respectful. No racial remarks. They should be punctual. We just want to make sure that you have a quality relationship as opposed to one that has the type of behaviors that makes a joyous journey of learning a terrible one. And if you have anyone who's exhibiting behaviors that are negative in this way, give us a call. That's the other role I have. I'm kind of like the principal, and I get sent in that says, you know, we need to talk about the way that you're treating your co-learners and your tutors. So that's not your job to make that disciplinary call, that's mine. I don't like those conversations, but I would hate it even more if you were having those conversations. They should show interest by covering regularly and completing their assignments. That's how they learn. We want to make sure that we have resources to make sure that they can remove those barriers so they can show up consistently. That's why we're here. Guidelines. But first, the photo. I love this photo. That's me in there. If you see me in person or even on this camera, you can see that. But the central star is Grace in the middle. She was the recipient of our Mard Little Award for Adult Learner Excellence. That's the award that we give out once a year to an adult learner who has exemplified excellence in learning. And she's holding her award with pride because she was such a great learner. To her left is Eduardo Osario. He was a volunteer tutor and the president of our organization who happened to be tutoring at El Concilio and helped with the selection process to be able to recognize the awesomeness that is known as Grace. And behind in the back is Orlando Little. He is the son of Mard Little, who was the adult learner who studied with us and was reading at below a third grade level. But by the time she left, she and her tutor and her granddaughter were able to write a book about her life. So I just wanted to explain that photo. We say we are Gracie's angels. Kind of different. She's way better than Charlie. So they're supposed to make sure that they are not providing transportation and they're not asking for transportation. Can you give me a ride? That should not even come out of their mouth. After the tutor relationship matures and moves on, can we go to a movie? We're not tutors and learners anymore, we're friends. But while we're tutoring, there's an expectation that we have a system to be able to take care of their transportation needs and they're not to ask you for it. We know kind-hearted people, they are oftentimes to say yes, but to really remove that temptation and that feeling of guilt if you want to say no, they're not supposed to ask to begin with. If they do ask, let me know. Tutoring sessions are in public spaces. We already talked about that. They know that ahead of time. They also know that they need to be in a condition where they can study and you can't be under the influence of alcohol or drug use and expect to be able to learn. And they are required to sign their agreement before they start their tutoring sessions. So they know this ahead of time. And you should not feel ashamed or worried to contact us if you see that they are violating these guidelines. Our job is to make sure that they are present to learn and to make sure that your experience in tutoring is something that can be productive. Can't be productive if people don't want to follow the same guidelines. Any questions about all of those guidelines for tutors and learners? I want to stop, be able to see people's faces. I know it's a lot of information, but we want to know let you know that what you're getting into fully, and to make sure that you know that the learners, they have the same experience. Questions so far? So it's pretty straightforward. Roll that beautiful bean footage. There's a commercial that says that much better than I do. Let's get into what happens afterwards. So some of you are going to be one-on-one tutors, and some of you may choose to study in a place that we have made for adult learners to be able to learn in the neighborhoods that they live in. Our goal is to make sure that literacy is available in every neighborhood and every zip code that needs it. And across Kalamazoo County, every neighborhood and every zip code does. And we have these things called community literacy centers. These are partnerships that we have with our community partners to be able to set up spaces where drop-in tutoring, one-on-one tutoring, small groups and classes, computer classes could take place. In Kalamazoo County, we've established 15 different partnerships across the community, and we are opening all of them back up after COVID has been over. Goodwill Industries was our first, and that's where I'm at right now. We call it the Reading Center at Goodwill, but there are different sites that are designed to be able to meet the needs of individual and groups of learners. So what's different in tutoring in a literacy center is you may be working with multiple learners, you may be working with different learners, you may be working with learners who are waiting for their permanent match. Before we had these literacy centers, tutors would sometimes not be available for learners who wanted to learn right away, and a learner might have to wait for as much as 6 months. After we started putting these literacy centers out into the community with all of our partners at libraries, at the adult education program, at Kalamazoo Gospel Ministries, at 2 low-income housing complexes. After we did this, the wait time went from 6 months to less than 2 weeks. So this might be one of the places that you'd like to be able to tutor, and you might be running book clubs or writing classes or a broad range of things after you complete this basic training. So we're building not just a faculty of talented volunteers such as yourself, we're also building a campus for adult learners that is accessible all throughout Kalamazoo County. We also have that virtual learning center. So remember those 80% that said after COVID-19 and they were offered the ability to study in person, they said, nah, I did really great studying from home, and they actually show up quite frequently as well. So they still have all these services. They have their ESL classes, their jobs classes, health literacy, book club, financial literacy, parent literacy, our GED prep program that's called Expressways to Success. They have self-paced learning software. They have a test of English fluency preparation class, citizenship writing classes, digital literacy. Basically, if we can teach it in person, we have it virtual as well. And we're looking for tutors that are that flexible. I'll tutor in person, I'll tutor virtually. The choice is yours, just like it is for them. So what you'll be going through for the training, if you choose to commit to complete it, is being oriented on how to use a system of learning with the curricular materials that we provide. This is your first step, is being capable of using the materials that are most commonly available in literacy and that we can provide the most training and support, because we've been using this for a long time. The Kalamazoo Literacy Council has been in existence since 1974. Many of these curricular materials, they were with us from the start, and they continue to this day. So I'm going to show you what some of these materials are that you're going to become aware of during the training that we have. First up is the Laubach Way to Reading. Now, I know it sounds strange, Laubach, L-A-U-B-A-C-H, and it's named after a gentleman by the name of Frank Laubach, that way back in 1930, that's when the roots are, yes, it's that old, over 90 years, he was working in the Philippines trying to figure out how to teach people, adults, how to read in their native language. And he came up with a strategy using the system of charts and images and matching it to the letters and sounds of that language, in this case, in the Philippines, and created a way of teaching literacy. A little bit later, he was joined by a woman by the name of Elizabeth Mooney Kirk, and they came up with a way of taking his Laubach method and converting it into the teaching of English, so that each one teach one was converted into a system that is now known as Laubach Way to Reading. Since 1981, it has been that structured system that has been used by many literacy councils throughout the United States and internationally, and we use that as a basis for our tutor training. You'll be trained on how to use this system because we have found it works with English language learners, native English speakers, for those who are reading at below 4th grade. There's 4 levels, levels 1 through 4, and each level helps to be able to develop those early literacy skills. By the time they leave that 4th book, they are reading proficiently enough to be able to go from learning to read, and now they're reading to learn. And you are the ones who are capable of helping them to go level by level, book by book, and we'll be training you mostly in the first couple of sessions on how to use these materials. If you become certified in this system and you move to California, like we have one of our tutor trainers did, likely that same training that we have will make you eligible to be able to teach pretty much anywhere that there's a literacy council based off of this system. The second system that we use is called the Challenger Series. I love that title. We're going to challenge you to read and then help you to be able to get there. This is a series that is more academically oriented. So for those who are saying, I'm trying to get a GED, or they really want to be able to build their reading comprehension and writing skills, this is a wonderful series to be able to work with. And we'll be training you in how to be able to transition from the Laubach Way to Reading series into the Challenger Series. You'll notice that it goes all the way up to level 8. By the time a person leaves this series, they are reading at about the 9th grade level and should be able to enter into a GED program without having those literacy gaps. And many of our current GED providers, they send learners who are reading at below those levels to us, so that by the time that they go to those GED preparation programs, or even KVCC, which has a similar type of entry level, they can read, write, and comprehend well enough to be able to continue on to those testing. The odd books are fiction, and the even books are nonfiction. So there's a little bit of a mix between each of those books. The book that we'll be working with is Challenger 4, because usually the progression from our system is if you are at the first grade reading level, you start at Laubach 1, you go all the way up through Laubach 4, and then you switch over to Challenger 4, and then continue onward with that series and other supports as well. You will have been sent some of those materials, and we'll go over them to make sure that you're aware of what they are and how to use them before we leave. But this is the second most prevalent curricular series that we use. A book that has been sent to you, and it is very important, is the Teaching Adults book, a literacy resource book. This is a book that is, at least when I first discovered it, we were working in partnership with Washtenaw Literacy in the Ann Arbor area, and they said, this is a great book for you to add to tutor training. I said, yes, show me how. There's 80 new activities to be able to add into the types of strategies that you use with Laubach, Challenger, or any other type of a system. So a lot of the strategies for acquiring those early literacy skills come out of this Teaching Adults book, and it's been something that's been a very solid supplement for our volunteers. And I encourage you to not wait for me. Look at that book and see how many different strategies in literacy that you can learn and try to help your learner to be able to reach their goals. Doesn't end with that. If your learner has a specific spelling goal, sometimes they say, I just want to be able to read, but other times they say, I really need to be able to spell correctly because I'm writing emails and letters and I'm expected to do that professionally. There is a series called Patterns in Spelling that you'll have access to. Not all of us are grammar experts. A few of us, we actually have degrees in English, and formal grammar education, that can be hard. One of our volunteer tutor trainers, her name is Paula Aldridge, she said, man, my learner is having so much difficulty with grammar, and I'm not a grammar expert. Let's find a resource to be able to make it so that it's easier. And we have this book that's available to you called Painless Grammar, and it's exactly what it sounds like. I looked at it and I said, wow, I don't have to remember all those terms, and I can teach it in a way where I can be confident or equally awkward with my learner, and we can learn together this grammar. Painless Grammar is great. Trio writing. For those who have a writing goal, the TRIO system is really good for being able to add some additional structured writing for them. We're looking for some who are interested in taking TRIO, but then also aiming it toward our learners to be able to write what they want. Not what the book is asking for, but now I want to write a letter to my children, my child's teacher, or I want to write my first poem, or whatever it is. TRIO is a really good structured system for developing those writing skills. Challenger has a lot of that as well. And we have, for those who are working on vocabulary, something called Wordly Wise. Wordly Wise is a system that is really meant to be able to broaden vocabulary by level. So if they went, for example, to Laubach way to reading level 2, that doesn't mean that they learned every word at the level 2 language level. Laubach way or Wordly Wise is a way to be able to add more vocabulary at that level for our individuals who want to be able to be more proficient in learning those words and using those words. This is particularly good for English language learners because they're going to want to know every word that they encounter. It doesn't matter if it's second grade, first grade, third grade, it's all new. And Wordly Wise is a really good way to be able to supplement and bring in a lot more words. This is not the only things we have. We have self-paced learning software. We have newspapers that are written for learners. It's called News for You. We just want to make sure that you don't feel like you have to invent lessons and find resources when we have all of them available to you and your learners for free. And our tutor trainers and friendly connectors, they have a high level of knowledge of how to be able to support them. So that is the materials that you'll be looking at and having access to. Pretty cool that we have this many services that are available. I hope you're impressed. We've been working hard to build it. I've been here for 13 years and we continue to add new resources. And we always look for those curious volunteers to be able to show us new strategies. Maybe some of you might have an interest in teaching future tutors how to do this tutor experience, because actually I end up joining the tutor training team because we lost a lot of our trainers. I went through every single training since September of 2010, but I need more friends to be able to help me to do this training. And you can give me a mark to see if I'm doing well or not at the end of the training as well, because I'd like to know if I'm doing a good job and find others who can do a better job than me. That's an open invitation. You don't have to think about it now, but I'll be asking it again when we complete this training. Any questions about the materials that we have so far before we move on to the final parts and get ready to be able to turn you loose? I know some people might be rooting for the Woeful Lions at 8. I'm not one of them, but I'm not going to keep you in the overtime.
So I was just gonna ask real quick, and we'll probably learn this later on, but as people progress, like, how are we like measuring like the progress of them working through these books?
Very good question, Elizabeth. So progress is measured by many means. First of all, if you're in Lawbach way to reading, at the end of each book, there's something called a checkup. They purposely do not call it a test because a lot of our learners, they say, I failed tests, and they don't even like assessments, but it's meant to be able to see that they've mastered the content before they progress into the next level of books. So you would administer a checkup for those individuals. If they have a life skills goal, such as I just want to be able to read better, read newspapers and read stories from our children, that assessment is rigorous enough to be able to show that they progress from one curricular level series of reading level from one to the next. And we use that assessment. For those that have a more formal learning goal, there's a different assessment that is used. It's called a test for adult basic education, the TABA test. And that measures more rigorously those academic levels to be able to see if you truly are a 3rd grade, 4th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade reader. So we, based off of the goals of the learners, that is the assessment that is used to be able to measure progress. We have found that through a lot of correlated studies that the Lawbach way to reading does correlate to those grade reading levels pretty accurately. So you can feel that if someone went from level 1 to level 2 in Lawbach way to reading, they did progress that level. For our English language learners, we have an assessment that is called the CASAS assessment. We use that for measuring their reading and their speaking and listening. And they take those assessments, the TABE assessment and the CASAS assessments, after 40 hours of instruction. So depending on the goals of the learner determines the types of assessments, and you will have access to the assessments that are the measurements based off of what your learner is needing. Hope I answered that question.
Okay, thank
I'd like
you.
to ask something. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
When you give the assessment, will it let you know what grade level they're on so you can go to the book for the next grade level to teach them?
It will let you know what their gaps are and what their strengths are. So a lot of times the way, even though it says grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, these are not 2nd graders or 3rd graders. They're just reading at that level. What we need to know is what gaps do they have. And sometimes you might have a person who's reading fluently, say at 5th grade, but still has 2nd grade grammar. So this is designed to find out what are the gaps that they have in terms of skills and to give you some direction on how to fill those gaps using the materials and strategies that we have. For those that do need a firm, am I reading at 5th grade level? That's what those formal assessments, the TABE assessment and the CASAS assessments, those are the 2 assessments that the state of Michigan accepts when they are measuring official grade levels for adult learners.
I also was gonna ask you, for adult learners with dyslexia, is there a different format or training that book material that we're gonna have to utilize to work with those individuals?
Good question. Here's some good news, because I asked I asked that same question, knowing that many of our adults, whether diagnosed or not, they have learning differences and learning disabilities. And we work with literacy studies specialists and others. And the strategies that are in, especially Lawbach way to reading, are very consistent with the same strategies for teaching individuals with learning differences and learning disabilities. So a lot of what you're learning and in this series is helpful for those with dyslexia and other types of learning differences. And if we do see that there's a need to go beyond that, we have great partnerships with organizations such as SLD Read and the McGinnis Reading Center and Clinic at Western Michigan University. Their trainings, when they looked at our trainings, they said, you're already doing it, you just didn't know it. And so a lot of the strategies that we have, they do translate well. You may need to have a greater variety of strategies That's why having those 80 additional activities that come out of that Teaching Adults book and having opportunities to continue to practice a multitude of strategies is very helpful, because our job is to make sure that we find how our learner learns and adapt our strategies to be able to make sure that that works. So it does work, and we have seen it with dyslexia. You may need a longer runway to be able to get that proficiency, but we've seen the success with adults with learning differences and learning disabilities of a broad range.
That's awesome. Thank you.
And the other thing, and this is just, I'm getting into what my uncle would say. He's a Baptist pastor. He says, "Yep, here's my garbage can talk." When he goes off script, I'm doing that with you. Our job really is to not necessarily worry about the diagnosis, but worry about the progress. And I can assure you, if you are finding ways where vocabulary is being acquired, fluency is being much more proficient, and confidence in writing is happening, it's not because you knew the diagnosis. It was that you knew what your learner needed. So if there is a need that goes beyond that, that goes more into those technical levels of assessment, we have access to it. But we have found time and time again that if you are patient enough and willing to try the strategies that come out of this training and other forums, that you can be successful in it. So the diagnosis, sometimes it can even be confining. I can tell you, when my son was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, I said, well, what do we need to do to make it so that he can reach his goals? And they told me pretty much the same things that you're gonna learn in this training. And he reads better than I do, knows science and math better than I do, and is the most articulate young man that I know. Yes, I am biased. But we need to move along. You'll have more opportunities to ask questions as well. But thank you for those questions, because they help us to know what you're asking and what you need. One of the things that you need is, we have said that we want you to be patient, empathetic, and understanding of the adults who come to us. And we're just going to take a few minutes to explain some of that perspective so that you walk in with the right mindset. This is not preschool for adults. This is a learning service that is designed to give them the literacy and language skills that they need to reach their goals. Usually when they're coming to us, yes, they are coming to us because they need to learn how to read, but there's a reason behind it. We say that everyone needs to read to excel at work. So they're coming to us and they're saying, I need to be able to read so I can teach my emails, I can write my own resumes and cover letters, and I can be just much more capable of being able to take care of myself in work. And if we are looking at this only as a situation where we're just working on you and you're really reading at that second grade level, but we're ignoring the fact that they have a goal of work, then we're not honoring their goal. That's why we say, please integrate their goals into the lessons. Bring in that job application. Talk about what their reading needs are. We had a forklift driver who was in job jeopardy because he can drive a forklift great, but didn't know the labeling. We taught 66 sight words, and that man was able to keep his job and get promoted. So it's very important that we honor why they're here and not assume that it's, well, you're a poor reader. It's like, well, that might be true, but I have a reason why I'm here. And it's not to be taught that and told that. It's to be empowered to be able to excel at work. We know that everyone needs to read to teach their kids. Some of our adult learners, they come to us because of their kids. They've been willing to take a bullet for their kid, so they're certainly willing to become that first teacher of their children. I will do anything for my kids, and I don't want them to end up like me. Can you help me? That's why if they are a parent, we want to treat them as a parent and give them the skills where at every stage of their child's development, they are confident and capable first teachers of their children. We have a parent literacy together program and family literacy days, and we equip the parents with the skills they need to read to their children, help them with their homework, become more confident in talking with their teachers. And as you are tutoring those parents, we want you to be able to treat them as parents and help them to be confident in that role. So it's not just preschool for adults. They might have a preschooler and they're developing the skills to help their child excel, but we really want to be able to make sure that we're motivated on the goals of learners, not the state or level of their literacy first. And we also say that everyone needs to read to keep their family healthy. Health applies to 100% of our adult learner population. That's why we have a health literacy class that is oftentimes taught by volunteers and interns that come from the College of Health and Human Services, the School of Social Work, Bronson School of Nursing, and some of you who have that expertise, because it's necessary. Some of our learners, they need that information so that they can be confident in enrolling in services and know what's happening to them during the course of that time. We've had some learners who they haven't had a good experience. They've read prescriptions wrong and had very bad health consequences, afraid to call 911 because they don't know what's going to happen. Our job is to give them the capability of being able to have the literacy skills and the understanding of health where they can access those services with confidence. And to be able to do things like read your own mail without passing it to your spouse, or worse, to your kids. We've actually had some of our learners who have their kids reading their mail. And a child who is 7 should never have to say, Dad, what does EVICTION mean? We've had that. So you're helping our learners who are learning with us to be able to change their condition with the literacy skills that you provide. What we want to make sure that you understand is their goals that motivate us, their needs that motivate us. And if you come with that perspective, you are a partner in their learning, as opposed to inflicting what I say is sometimes your goodwill upon them. You need to get a GED. They didn't ask for it, we're not teaching that GED. They might say, you know what I really need right now is someone who can help me fill out that application for my child's summer camp. And you're asking me to do something I'm not prepared for. So we want to make sure that you really understand the goals of learners is the thing that we serve most. Now, when they build a bond with you, they start to find, what can I do with that literacy? I might be able to take that literacy and write my own book. I might be able to apply for a job I never thought I was qualified for. I might be able to do things that I never thought was possible. But until they want it, we focus on their goals first. And that's a very good way to be able to show respect for their goals, respect for their choices, and to be able to be a partner in their journey, as opposed to sound like that teacher that they might not have had a good experience with. You know, the teacher always told me wrong and told me what the answers needed to be. And when I didn't get there, I felt like I was, in the terms of what Rob Smith, who you'll hear about a little bit later, he said, I felt stupid because they kept asking me questions that I had no interest in having the answers for. So just wanted to give you that call, and then also let you know that for those 25,000 adults who are out there who need our help, they need someone who can recognize and support their goals, because oftentimes where they've gone to are with places that have set expectations and inflicted those expectations on them in ways that they just say, I don't want to try anymore. I went to the family health center, turned in my paperwork, and she laughed at me because I checked mammogram and pap smear. I didn't know. You said all I had to do was fill it out. I went in, and I'm a great at welding, but they didn't care about that. I couldn't fill out the paperwork to get the job, but I could weld better than anybody else. And they would not even accept me because I could not complete my application. You are helping them to give voice to their goals and ambitions and have the tools to be able to do it without anyone else being that person that's interpreting them for them. They should be able to choose what they would like to be able to do. Read recipes and be able to cook on their own. Read to their kids any book that they choose, and you're providing those skills to give them that empowerment. That's what we are here to do, is empower adults to reach their full potential through the literacy skills that we provide. So you're a part of something special. Every year we find more volunteers who bring more skills and talents and abilities. And because of that, we have more successes that we can see. Successes that sound something like this. Jerry Nelson was in drug court, never was able to read to his own children, but after studying in the center that I'm sitting in right now with tutors and instructors, he was able to go from functional illiteracy to functional literacy. And that little girl that you see is his granddaughter. He read to her on film for an international documentary with confidence and great fluency. And he said, I see progress in myself, and it makes me happy to see my teachers and tutors happy. Go, Jerry. Cassina, she wanted to be able to improve her literacy and computer skills. Her tutor, Carly, came in and helped her with those skills. And she says, if it wasn't for you, volunteers, I would not have made it so far. She was able to get past those struggles. Really good at computer now. Anthony Everson, he was probably a person who I learned a lot from earlier in my time here at the Literacy Council. He dropped out of high school at 17. He said he wasn't really good at high school anyway, but his mom needed help with the bills. 51 years old, he came back to school and said, I'm not going to let anybody or anything slow me down or stop me now. His tutor was a former elementary school principal, and they worked together, and he could read fluently and has been able to achieve every goal set in front of him. Rob Smith, this gentleman, when he came to us because his kids needed him. He said, my kids need me to teach them their homework, and I can't read, and I feel, in his words, stupid. He stayed with us for 18 months, improved five grade reading levels, and was able to keep his children on track for reading at grade level. Every single one of them. He has 3 of them, I believe. And all of them during the time with us were able to read at grade level. But for himself, he was able to transition into a different job. Instead of loading trucks, he got his CDL license and is paid well to drive the trucks. He became the first Student Advisory Council president for the Kalamazoo Literacy Council, and he served on our board of directors for 3 years. He said after he learned how to read, everything is like new. And Barbara Horton, who's studying with her tutor at the Washington Square Library, she says that it's never too late to learn. If people want to fulfill any dream that they've been lingering on, education is your first step. You are the first step for many who are coming back into education and pursuing goals that will help them to be empowered to reach their full potential. And some of the things that you can do after the 14 hours of training, yes, this does count. So it's not like, what, we have 14 more to go? No, you don't. You can be that literacy tutor that this training completes. You can be that computer instructor like Cassina needed and several others, or that writing instructor to be able to acquire those basic writing skills so they can pass those writing assignments for the GED or entrance into KBCC. Or you can be creative and work with Farmer Mike, also known as me, and provide literacy in the garden. Or if you want to work with our English language populations, you can be a classroom assistant, also tutoring, or help us through that CASAS testing, proctoring, or any other service roles. The gateway into volunteerism and serving adults for the Literacy Council is completing this training, and we are hopeful that that is what all of you will do. So the next steps, I'm going to walk you through it, is we have training on Monday and then Thursday, and Monday and then Thursday from 6 o'clock to 7:30. If you complete that at the end of it, you are a volunteer tutor of the Kalamazoo Literacy Council, and our organization is obligated to help every adult learner that you encounter or are assigned, and to accommodate every training need that you have. You're not paying for it. You can expect it. This is why I write grants, our board raises funds, and our community response to need is to support your effort. If it's not really ready for the taking on this obligation, please stay in contact with us, and we'll make sure that when you are ready, that this same system of support is available for you. Some of the things that you'll need is you'll get an email. Jesse's really good at sending it, Keto as well, and you'll be able to see more purposefully what the Laubach Way to Reading method looks like. We expect that you watch these videos, and with the materials that we provided, practice and become proficient enough as best as you can so that you can demonstrate that method when we come back on Monday. Do not worry, we're not going to expect that you do it perfectly. The training is there for us to be able to see how that method works. And once you learn this level, you should be able to learn every level of Laubach Way to Reading. It takes about an hour if you watch the videos and practice with purpose. Take notes and be ready to ask any question as well. That Teaching Adults book, we expect that you'll read pages 19 through 28 and page 58. The email is going to have all of this. And the Tutor Handbook, to read those initial pages 3 through 4, just to give you some information about the beginnings of how adults learn. And then finally, as a writing sample, writing the full alphabet, capital letters and small letters, using the method that we have in the materials. You can either scan it, take a cut picture of it and send it to us, or when we have our tutor training, you can hold it up and say, here's my sample, and we'll do the same thing. But the goal is to be able to give you an idea of what the writing expectations are by completing that. That should take about 15 minutes, unless you write like my incredibly brilliant but sloppy writing son. He's really had to work on his handwriting. So hopefully you'll be able to do that as well. I'm going to stop sharing so I can show you where these materials are. Then we can leave any remaining minutes for the time for questions. You all should have got the folder, it looks something like this. On the right-hand side is the tutor application form with the job description, the background check, and confidentiality agreement, and a reference form. That's the information that between now and the end of the training that you will be expected to complete. Jesse cannot activate you into a tutor even after you've completed the training if we do not have this packet. Also on the right-hand side of your folder, remember we said we had that writing sample? What does he mean writing sample? What method was he talking about? It has manuscript writing, capital letters, lower letters. That's what we would have as a standard way of being able to demonstrate that writing. So take a normal piece of lined paper, write out your capital letters and your lower letters, and send it to us by email, or take a picture of it and send it to us. Or if you don't want to do that or have challenges in doing that, we'll make sure that we can take pictures of it when you have the training. On the right, you have the lesson notes for book 1, lesson 1. That is the lesson that we'll be teaching. So that gives you that information. The actual behind that lesson notes, there is the charts that the learners have. They're in color, by the way. We're giving you the photocopies to save us some expense. So you'll be expected later in the training to be able to go through this chart using those lesson notes. That's like the lesson plan to be able to teach that chart. Not right away, but we have all that lesson 1 materials. Later in the training, you'll be asked to teach either lesson 3 or lesson 4 based off of the assignment. And we've given you that information ahead of time. So if you follow the instructions, you'll be able to teach either lesson 3 or lesson 4 based off of the assignments. On the left-hand side, you'll be moving from the Lavak way to reading to Challenger. So behind all the facts that we already went over is lesson 4 or lesson 1 of Challenger for the heart, and behind it should be the teacher's notes that are in the teacher's editions manual. So we've given you that information so that as the emails are coming together, you have what you need to be able to teach Lavak way to reading 1, Lavak way to reading 2, and my favorite lesson out of Challenger for lesson 1, the human heart. I'm giving you an excerpt out of the teacher's manual for Challenger. So everything we have here, you will be given the actual copies of, but for training purposes, you have copies. And for those who join our ESL program, we also have the Teaching Adults, an ESL resource book, but you would get that after the training as we continue our journey. So for review, watch the videos, read the reading selections, and make sure that you have a writing sample